I do lots of videos on what to buy to get organized, and I tend to drop in some subtle hints on hanging them. But in this video, I want to give some solid tips to keep organizers from falling off the wall by finding studs or using good wall anchors. And I will have a great story to share in the meantime. Two big things to point out and two major things you will need, and some big tips too. Oftentimes when I'm in homes, it surprises me that some things are just screwed or nailed into sheetrock without hitting a stud. Studs are not as easy to find as one might think. I once had a customer argue with me that all studs are 16 inches apart. As I use a stud finder and a nail from my double check system, I usually find the stud with the stud finder and then I double check it with a nail and a hammer. She kept interrupting me and stopping me and telling me I was doing it wrong. She became indignant and took the tape measure away from me and measured from the corner. I'll stop here. I had to prove her wrong. First thing to point out, not all walls start at the corner, and some start on the other end of the wall. There are walls running perpendicular to the other side of the wall, and I can go on and on about how 16 inches is a general rule of thumb depending on other walls in the house, blocking, and hundreds of other scenarios. It's easier to use a stud finder. The first major thing you will need, unless you're just really good like my daddy was at knocking on the sheetrock and listening to the sound of it, and looking at the wall and just seeing where it is. Until I can see through walls like Superman, I'll keep using this stud finder to see through the walls. An insider tip is, on some walls, when you stand back and you look at the wall, you can see the screw heads or the nail heads when they put them in to hang the sheetrock on a bad sheetrock job or an older home, because sometimes the sheetrock, the houses shift a little bit and those nail heads start to show through. You kind of step back and kind of see the patterns. You see, when used properly, a stud finder will find the left side of a stud and the right side. And yes, I do an old school test where I take a nail and a hammer and I test that left edge, I test that right edge to make sure that it is a stud, because the stud finder sometimes finds pipes. I had an instance once where it found a pipe, and with a simple test, you've heard me do this before, boom, 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 you got a stud probably, ding, 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 you got a pipe, you get it. And there are all kinds of stud finders. If you spend a little bit more money, there's kinds that will help you find all kinds of things in walls, like pipes too. And the second major thing to point out, and here's also a common problem, what if there isn't a stud where you want to hang the organizer? Which leads to the other thing you will need, a sheetrock wall anchors. But they should be your last resort. So here's that big tip that I want to give you. If the organizer you are hanging isn't wide enough to catch a stud, or two if needed, or if the pre-drilled holes on the organizer don't line up with where the stud is, or there's not a stud right where you want to put the organizer, get a board long enough to catch a stud down further beyond where the organizer is going, and long enough in the other direction to catch another stud, and screw that board into the studs, and then attach the organizer to the board wherever you want it to line up. Of course, get a pretty board or paint it the wall color, or hang some other organizer on the empty space of the board to maximize it. This idea works great behind doors. Of course, in rooms that don't get seen, or it doesn't matter when the door is shut and the organizer, or shut the other way, and the organizer is exposed. This works especially in closets. And think of all those other areas in a house that you can do this in to add more space. And lastly, here are the sheetrock anchors I recommend. I've got them right here. These screw-in kind that are plastic. Another screw-in kind that's metal. Of course, I like the metal ones better. These Mac Daddy ones like this. Now these have a hole. They screw into the sheetrock. These little twist here locks it in. And then when you put the screw in there, it flips a little lever out here. And then when you tighten the screw, it pulls that little lever up tight to the back of the sheetrock, like a molly bulb. These are the Mac Daddy. These I usually get from Easy Closets, which you've heard me recommend a lot. That's the kind that I really like, but they aren't foolproof, because if they aren't done properly, or things that are too heavy for them get hung, or better yet, once you get organized, you start using your tools more, any anchor can eventually get loose and wiggle out, leaving a big hole in the sheetrock, or weakens it, and the organizer falls off the wall. So my favorite idea is the longer board to catch a stud or straddle two of them. But here's another tip. If you use the screw-in kind, like these kind that I really like right here, you can tap a little small nail hole through the sheetrock first. Not only are you testing for pipes, not only the little plastic screw-in ones break sometime, and then you'll find, like I said, if you find a pipe or screw, it helps that. But using this pilot hole method just makes putting them in the wall easier. It goes in easier, and then the plastic ones don't break usually. Thank you so much for tuning in to my channel, Create Space to Get Organized. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Patreon, where I can give you a lot more personalized help. All at Create Space and Get Organized. Now, if you are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the messy areas you have, please go like and subscribe to all my channels so I can help you more. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you next time.